Less than 24 hours ago, State Senator Louise Lucas telling me Governor Northam has to go over the blackface controversy.
I am so praying that he would do that and get it behind us.
But today, Senator Lucas running from reporters. As for Governor Northam, one of his closest allies telling me he's not resigning.
You've got to work through it to make things right. Otherwise, he just runs away in disgrace and shame, and he's not going to do that.
So let's get to Tom Llamas. Tom, the longer you stay there, the worse this gets. He's live tonight from Richmond, Virginia. And tonight there are not only calls for the governor now to resign, but calls for the lieutenant governor to resign after that accusation of sexual assault.
That's right, David. The National Organization of Women has called on Lieutenant Governor Fairfax to step down, and at least one Democratic congresswoman from Virginia says she believes Dr. Tyson. And David, this is all creating a real crisis here. If the governor, the lieutenant governor, and also the attorney general all step down, then the House Speaker becomes the new man in charge in a way that we have not seen in modern political history.
Tom, they're applauding you. They just saw your piece from World News Tonight last night.
Okay, great.
So would love to hear from you, and
yeah,
they can see you on the screen.
Yep, and I'll kind of pan it around
so you can see them.
Oh yeah. All right, well, first thing I want to say is go Saints. Can you guys see and hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, great. First off, I wish I could be there, but as you guys probably were told, duty calls. I'm over here in Richmond, Virginia. The story sort of exploded since we got here over the weekend, and it really hasn't stopped with kind of all the scandals that have been unfolding over the last few days, as you guys just saw my report. I'm really excited, though, to be able to talk to you guys today. I started out my career in journalism in high school, much like you guys did. I started interning at a news station in Miami when I was about 15 years old. And I interned every summer after that through college while I was at Loyola. Got a great education at Loyola, especially when it came to journalism and to TV journalism. Loyola has some of the best facilities in the country and really just great opportunities. Teachers who have worked in the industry, teachers who know how the business operates, and teachers who really can help you with that next step. And for a lot of you, that next step, if you guys study journalism, will be just to get a job. For others, you guys will move on to grad school. But as far as getting that job right out of college, which is so important, Loyola is a great place, and it really gives you a good foundation for that. A couple of things I want to tell you guys, because I don't want to talk too long, and if you guys have questions, I'll take your questions. I'll just give you a couple of rules that I live by in this business that'll help you even now as you're in high school. First is the first rule of journalism, which if you're on any story, whether you're working at your high school paper, if you're working in the yearbook, wherever you're working, if you don't ask, you don't get. So always remember that if you're stuck in a place in your story where you don't know where it's going or you need a response for someone, just always remember, if you don't ask, you don't get. And for all the people that are working in the yearbook departments of your high schools, you know, it's so interesting because yearbooks have become such an important part of the story I'm covering right now. The yearbook, essentially a historical document for the governor, for who is here. He claims that he had nothing to do with that racist photo that appeared in his yearbook. But nonetheless, the yearbook has become the center of the story in many ways. So it shows you the importance that you guys have in the yearbook committee, that your work is essentially the historical document for that year of your high school. And it may not seem like it's that important right now because it's high school, but 30, 40 years down the road, it may be very, very important. So always remember that. Something else I wanna sort of share with you guys that I think is really important is that if you guys want to do something, if you're hungry, go out and work at your local paper, work at your local news station, keep bugging them until they give you a job. That's what I did. And it'll always give you a leg up as far as the next step, you know, whether you're in high school or you're college. The more work experience you have, the actual experience you have working with other journalists, experience you have in newsroom scene, if you like it or if you don't like it, you'll only get that if you're there inside that newsroom. So I would definitely push to try to do that. As far as, you know, the skill and the craft, you know, find journalists that you really like, whether they're your local reporter at the newspaper or they're somebody on network news television. Watch them, follow their careers, see how they develop stories, see how they write, listen to the way they track their pieces, listen to the way they set up their pieces as far as the storytelling that goes in the news package. And that way you can kind of sort of build your own style, even though you guys are still very young and you're still learning a lot of the basics. you can start building your style this young because you can kind of see the other journalists that you like. And I'm not saying to copy them in any way, but I'm saying you can start to see their style, just like whether it be sports or something in entertainment or music, whatever it is, there are always people that you'll sort of gravitate towards. You'll like their style, you like the way they present, so try to do that as well. And what else can I tell you? It's a great business. You get to travel the world in a lot of cases. You get to see a lot of really interesting things. You have a front row seat to history. So it's a blessing to have this job. It's an honor, and it's definitely something we take with a lot of responsibility, especially during these times when so many people are watching the news. So with that, I will take some questions if you guys have questions, and I'll answer anything you guys want.
So, Tom, you might also want to have your camera and let people see where you are.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna step aside. This is the Capitol State House here in Richmond, Virginia. There's a protest going on right now. This is a pro-life protest because they're debating on a lot of bills right now in Virginia, and because of that, all this drama has become even more intense because you have the 3 top elected officials in the middle of scandals right now, and they're trying to pass bills. Today's actually budget day, so it's one of the most important days of the legislative session.
And we do have some other clips that we can show, but should we
Okay.
ask for questions about the
Whatever you guys want. Yeah, we could do whatever you want.
Anybody have any questions? We have some other clips that we do want to show, but what about questions for Tom and his story? Here's your chance. Close. That one.
We can repeat them.
Yes.
We can repeat them.
Hey, what's up? You know, that's a good question, and thanks for it. I will say this. You know, it may look like somewhat of a glamorous life where you're sitting right now, but to get to this point where I'm at, it does take a lot of hard work, and you work a lot of weekends. You work every single holiday. You're working Christmas. You're working Thanksgiving because the news never stops. I anchor on the weekends right now. So I always tell people, if you really want to make it in this business, realize that you're going to be working long hours. My first job in this business where I actually got paid was I was an overnight production assistant for MSNBC. I was making $14 an hour, trying to live in Manhattan on that. I had no health insurance, and my in time was 9 p.m. My out time was 7 a.m. So it was a true overnight shift, and I did that for a long time. And I've worked some brutal shifts, and everyone does. And anytime you get a promotion in this business, you sort of get a strange schedule. So that's something you have to accept and understand. But I mean, if you love the business and you love this industry like I do, and you love what you're doing, and you think it's as important as I do, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm actually happy to work weekends because I love what I do, and it's totally fine. And we make it work with our family. I have 3 little kids. But yeah, that's the first thing. I mean, you know, you're gonna have to work hard and not make a lot of money. And if I wouldn't really get into the business for the money. It's not really something like finance or law or medicine that pays very high salaries. At first, you can make very high salaries, but that's not why you should get into it, and that's not really what I think attracts a lot of people here. It's to tell stories, it's to find facts, and it's to sort of be on the front line of history.
Let's take a look at, we're going to pull up your second clip that you sent to us,
Okay.
Tom.
Okay.
So if you'll bear with us, you have a question? Can he be asking the question?
Yeah, sure.
Come on.
Sure.
Just guys, I'm switching. So just so when you see yourself in there.
Alright, so how you doing? My name is Steve. Alright. My first question is, how do you think this story will prepare your career? And my second question is, do you ever consider a story to be done?
No, it's a good question. I mean, you never know which way a story is going to end. I covered the Trump campaign, and I was covering Donald Trump for 2 years all over the country. And the conventional wisdom, a lot of people thought, a lot of smart political thinkers thought that he was not going to win, and he ended up winning, and it was a huge upset in 2016, and that story has not stopped. That story never stops. So in some cases, stories never stop. In other cases, it is sad when a story goes nowhere, just like a case. I've covered a lot of murders, especially when I was a young reporter in Miami, where somebody, somebody's relative, a father, a brother, a son would be murdered, and it would never get solved. And you would do story after story, and it would be really, really sad. And sometimes stories essentially end because the case ends, but you have to sort of keep fighting forward. And sometimes you can't because there's just no new developments. But It's a good question, and yeah, some stories never end. And this story, I mean, we're going to stay on it until we figure out what happens. I mean, everyone is calling on everyone to resign, but no one says they're going to resign. So that's where we're at.
I would assume they're going to keep you there until how long?
Yeah, I have to anchor on Saturday, so I'm going to probably be leaving at least by Friday night.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and show a second clip, Tom, that you sent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Coast Guard clip.
Okay, you want me to set it up real quick?
Yeah,
or do you guys
please,
wanna,
please.
So this was last week in Detroit. It was negative 50 degrees. That was the wind chill factor. Negative 50 degrees. So I know you guys think it's cold in Louisiana when it's like 80 degrees. This was very, very cold. And we were with the Coast Guard, an ice cutter. They basically cut the ice so transport ships can come through, cargo ships, things like that. And it turned out that it was so cold the ice was frozen over in the lake, so we could get out and we could jump onto the lake and walk around, which was wild. But it was negative 50, so I could only talk with my mask off for about a minute. So here's that clip.
Okay.
Now on the ice in Lake St. Clair, Michigan. Good morning, Tom. You are actually on the ice. I expect you to be on a boat on the ice.
Michael, this is incredible. We are in the middle of Lake St. Clair. We're off the coast of Detroit. This looks like Antarctica out here, but it's actually a lake. This is one of the busiest shipping lanes of the Great Lakes. To prove to you that we are on a boat, take a look at this. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter right there, Morro Bay. It's an ice cutter, and it is so cold here. The ice is so thick, we're actually able to walk out in the middle of this lake. And this ice, it's hard to see, but if you look through the ice, it's about 8 to 10 inches thick right now. We do not recommend ever coming out in a lake in conditions like this, but we are with the Coast Guard. They have the rescue team here, and this is part of the reconnaissance mission to see how thick this ice is. I just asked them how cold they thought it was right here, Michael. It's about negative 50 degrees, and as we walk around here, you can see it's just ice everywhere you look, but this is a lake. And Michael, take a look at how thick some of this ice is. These are like glaciers right here, super thick, nowhere to go. It's just too dangerous for any boats to be out here, and a little dangerous for us to be out here, but thankfully we're with the Coast Guard. Michael?
All right, Tom. A little cold.
Yeah, that was cold. I don't know if I do that again. Okay, I have 2 to 3 minutes, Sonia, before I actually have to do another report. For ABC. So if you guys want to do some more questions, you want to run that other clip.
Any questions, guys? We'll run that other clip once he signs off. Question?
Okay. Yeah, it's ABC News Live. Yeah, you guys can pull it up live if you guys want on ABC News Live.
Okay. Come on down.
Okay. Andy, I'll be there in 2 minutes, okay? 2 minutes, I'll be there. Or 1 minute, I'll be there, yeah.
All right, hi. I just want to know, as like a Loyola graduate, would you say that, I mean, the school is absolutely amazing, and how has it prepared you to do what you're doing right now?
So, this is the best way to answer that. When you get into a newsroom, they're going to ask you, what can you do? And you're probably going to be serving coffee and answering phones, which is fine. But if you do know how to edit, if you do know how to write, if you know how a newscast is put together, if you know how graphics work, you're going to be way ahead of a lot of other people. And in Loyola, we had so many production classes and so many classes that were actually putting on newscasts that you get a lot of experience. You get real world experience. When I got to MSNBC, I knew how to edit. I knew how to write for TV. I knew how graphics worked. I knew how to put together a quick update. So, I mean, all of that stuff is invaluable. And really, you get that either by interning or going to a really good program. And Loyola definitely offers you that. It's also not bad to go to school in New Orleans. It's a little bit of fun.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Guys, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Put up ABC News Live if you guys want to watch the report.
So
okay, take care.
We'll pull you up live.
We'll pull him up live.
We've got more of our exclusive interview with the First Lady, Melania Trump. She's now addressing her allegations that her husband had infidelities, and she's talking about how she copes with having her marriage in the spotlight. She sat down with our chief national affairs correspondent, Tom Llamas. Quite an interview. Good morning.
That's right, Cecilia. Good morning, guys. Good morning as well. Our First Lady, for the most part, has not commented about this sensitive time in the White House surrounding news of her husband's past alleged affairs, but now, for the first time, she's opening up. So I asked her, has all of this hurt you? The First Lady stepping off the plane in Malawi on her first solo trip abroad.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
out on her own, thousands of miles away from a White House at times beset by turbulence, even scandal. And this past year, a new headline that placed her marriage under the white-hot scrutiny of the press.
We're going to begin, though, with that new scandal rocking the White House.
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels.
An affair the White House denied, but the president later admitted he knew about a hush payment made by his lawyer to Stormy Daniels. There was no public response from the First Lady. But in the days after, she canceled plans to travel with her husband to the World Economic Forum in Davos, then arrived at the State of the Union address separately. All of this raising speculation about the state of the first couple's marriage. You did agree to this interview, to your credit, with no preconditions, knowing that there could be some tough questions asked. And it has been a tough year for you personally. You're not the first lady to have to deal with her husband's alleged infidelities. Has this put a strain on your marriage?
It is not concern and focus of mine. I'm a mother and a first lady, and I have much more important things to think about and to do. I know people like to speculate, and media like to speculate about our marriage and circulate the gossip. But I understand the gossip sells newspapers, magazines, getting advertisers. And unfortunately, we live in this kind of world today.
Have you been hurt, though?
Media, what is speculating, yeah, it's not always pleasant, of course, but I know what is right and what is wrong and what is true and not true.
In the swirl of scandal, Melania Trump stayed silent. But one of her husband's attorneys, Rudy Giuliani, went on television and seemed to speak for her.
Can you tell her how does she feel these days with all these Stormy Daniels affairs going on in the background?
She believes in her husband. She knows it's untrue. I don't even think there's a slight suspicion that it's true.
The next day, this statement from the First Lady spokesperson. I don't believe Mrs. Trump has ever discussed her thoughts on anything with Mr. Giuliani. The only time you have commented publicly your office was when Rudy Giuliani came out and said,
you look at the right, we're going to pause the Melania interview because he's coming up now live on ABC News.
True.
Can you pause
Is that an accurate
the
statement?
Melania interview and pull
I
that
never
up?
talked to Mr. Giuliani.
Why do you think he came out?
All under fire, facing political scandals and facing the pressure to resign. We go now to Richmond, Virginia, and our Chief National Affairs Correspondent, Tom Llamas. Tom, first it was the governor, then the lieutenant governor, and now the attorney general under fire.
That's right. You have three different scandals colliding here in Richmond, Virginia. Just behind me, the State House. And what you're seeing behind me, these protesters are actually pro-life demonstrators. They're here because this is one of the busiest times of the legislative season right now. It's budget day. So there's a lot of important business that needs to be going on. All of this happening with the backdrop that Governor Ralph Northam admitted he appeared in blackface in 1984, dressing up as Michael Jackson. Nearly every single Virginia politician had called on him to resign. Then the lieutenant governor, who is the next in line of succession, he gets accused of sexual assault from a case back in 2004. A professor from Scripps College, a political science professor, says at first she started a consensual sort of kissing relationship, if you will, with Lieutenant Governor Fairfax, but then Lieutenant Governor Fairfax forced oral sex on her. Fairfax has denied these allegations, calling it a political smear. And then the Attorney General also admitted yesterday that he appeared in blackface in the 1980s when he dressed up as the rapper Curtis Blow. So this has been taking so many twists and turns. It's been absolutely wild. And part of the problem is that the Attorney General called on the governor to resign for appearing in blackface, and yet he too has done the same thing. Virginia Democrats, and we've been chasing them all around the State House, have nothing to say at this point. They wanted Governor Northam to resign. He's actually a Democrat too, but they've been sort of silent when it comes to Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. And the same with the Attorney General, because they say they want to wait and then put out statements later. Another big problem is that if those three men resign, the next person in line is a Republican. He's the Speaker of the House of Delegates, which is just behind me. So, like I said, lots of twists and turns. This story changes every single day. We don't know exactly where it's going to go, but no one so far has resigned. Natalie?
Tom, are you getting a sense of whether it's likely that they will resign, and what is the public response to this? We're hearing about a lot of protests and pressure being put on them.
Well, there is a lot of pressure. Mark Herring, the Attorney General, sort of ran out of his office yesterday. We got a quick shot of him running into his car, and then this morning he sort of zoomed back into his office. He has not released any new information. Lieutenant Governor Fairfax has hired the same law firm that represented Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearing, which is very ironic because Dr. Vanessa Tyson, the woman who's accusing him, has hired the same firm as Dr. Ford that sort of did all of her legal work and was with her during that same time during the Kavanaugh accusation as well. But Fairfax is standing still. He's trying to see if he can sort of withstand all of these scandals surrounding him. And then the governor, Governor Northam, one of his closest allies, tells me that he's not going to resign. So right now it's sort of a stalemate with all these scandals swirling and nobody sort of resigning. But the calls are growing louder from all over Virginia, really, and all over the country for some of these politicians to step down. And Natalie, before I send it back to you, because I know you guys have to wrap this up, I want to say hello to a journalism conference that's happening right now at Loyola University in New Orleans. They're actually watching ABC News Live right now, and they wanted to watch this report, and they're watching the entire briefing room today for the first time. So we want to say hello to them as I send it back over to you.
All right, thank you, and we say hello to them as well. And thank you, Tom, for following all those twists and turns. We know you will stay on top of it in Richmond, Virginia. And now we go to that story we've been covering for weeks, the humanitarian and political crisis in Venezuela. We have two reporters on the ground there. We have Cody Weddle, a freelance journalist in Caracas.
So that's what we call breaking news.
Bruno Rober in a moment, too. He is on the Colombia-Venezuela